Hello and welcome to TV on TV. I'm State Representative Tommy Vitolo. You're watching Brookline Interactive Group. Today is Thursday, May 5th, and we have a great, albeit atypical, show today. Most of the time, I'll interview an interesting guest for about 25 minutes, but today we're going to show you highlights from Tuesday night's TV on TV special, our election night results show. First the news, and then stay tuned. Russia is now moving to annex several vast areas of established Ukrainian territory, which could give them control over the nation's eastern region. A leaked draft opinion published on Monday by Politico revealed the Supreme Court plans to overturn Roe versus Wade, which guarantees the right to an abortion as well as provides the foundation for decisions allowing all sorts of matters of privacy related to marriage and sexuality. As a result of this leaked decision, many states are already proposing restrictive legislation surrounding abortion rights. Those, of course, in addition to the states that had been trying to restrict a woman's right to choose already. This is a disaster in slow motion. It is, it's incredibly problematic, and there is no doubt that this will be a topic that dominates political conversation at the national level for at least the next 6 months, if not longer, and incredibly disappointing. Elon Musk claims to be going through with his $44 billion deal to purchase Twitter, despite doubts surrounding how he will manage the platform. A recent Suffolk University Boston Globe poll focusing on the Massachusetts gubernatorial race found that Attorney General Maura Healey would lead by a 2-to-1 margin over either Republican candidate in November's general election. The state's pension fund has begun to divest from Russian assets after receiving a mandate from the legislature. The fund's holdings, valued at $250 million at the beginning of this calendar year, are down to $9.6 million. And to be clear, that's not because the pension fund has divested, but rather because those funds have lost over 90% of their value in the markets. Kiss 108's Matt Siegel of Boston's Maddie in the Morning announced his retirement after 41 years on the air. The Brookline Department of Public Works is holding its first Spring Fest on Saturday, May 7th from 11 to 2 at Allerton Overlook at Olmsted Park. On Tuesday, Brookline held its annual municipal election in the newly re-precincted precincts, I suppose. Although there were no competitive townwide races, there was quite a bit of action at the town meeting level. Townwide elected officials who did not seek re-election include Raul Fernandez, Susan Wolf Ditkoff, Matthew Shakespeare, Christine Knopf, and Sam Botsford, and I thank them for their service. Townwide newcomers include Select Board member Mike Sandman, School Committee member Nancy Regorer, Library Trustee Rick Fredkin, and Constables Debbie Hatzia-Left-Heredius and Isaac Silverberg. Now, we had our results show Tuesday night, and I want to share with you some highlights from that show. Tune in to see an interview with Town Clerk Ben Kaufman, performed by a young reporter from the Sagamore. And we've also got a conversation between myself and Mike Sandman, and perhaps a bit more. So thanks for watching Brookline Interactive Group, and stay tuned.
It sounds as though many of your responsibilities as legislative aide in 2019 to 2021 involved Representative Vitolo. Am I correct on that?
Yes, I was his legislative staffer at the State House.
Can you tell me a bit about your position in the office and just your overall relationship with the representative?
Sure. So as his legislative aide, I was his sole staffer. So I was in charge of everything from scheduling to drafting legislation, reviewing bills, writing testimony, helping with constituent services, going to events in Brookline with the representative and on his behalf. It was a really great opportunity to both get to know my community better in Brookline, as well as to really get a good understanding and a grasp of the legislative process and what was going on. As town clerk, a lot of what we do is guided by state law, and a lot of those state laws actually came through our office and came before the legislature in my time as a legislative aide. So it's been a very helpful background to have as the town clerk to be able to take those tools and that knowledge and apply it.
And would you tell me a bit of what your role as town clerk entails?
Sure. So the town clerk does a lot of different things. We are the record keepers for the town. We keep all of the vital records, marriage licenses, birth certificates, death certificates, keep track of that. We also keep track of the activities of town government. So town meeting, the minutes, the votes, what's going on in the select board and other boards and commissions. And the biggest thing that most people know us for are elections. We are in charge of elections when they happen in Brookline, including the May 2022 annual town election, which is being run by my office.
So as this is your first election, would you tell me a bit about this process and how it's been for you? Are you nervous, excited? What's it like?
So I think mostly excited. It's been a really fun process. I come from a campaigning background, so I've seen the other side of elections, but getting to really be in it and see all of the work that goes on behind the scenes has given me a real appreciation for the electoral process, for the value that our elections provide, as well as a great appreciation for the team that gets this done. I definitely would not be able to do this election without the help of my town clerk staff, Alicia, Farisa, Catherine, Danelle, Michael. They've been in working long hours, working on weekends, doing election prep. There's a large team at town hall who do huge amounts of work behind the scenes that I don't think a lot of people realize. In here on Sunday, testing machines, in here late at night, packing up the boxes that go out to the polling location, driving trucks around, setting things up, being at the polls at 6 a.m. to make sure they get out properly on election day, and then staying until 11 o'clock at night counting ballots to make sure every vote gets counted. It really is a team effort that we wouldn't be able to do without the help of so many volunteers, election workers, town employees, and of course, my dedicated staff.
Have you encountered any surprises or challenges during this process?
So I think the biggest challenge that we've been facing is a positive challenge. We have a lot of changes happening for this election. We have a new precinct, we have new polling locations, we have new voting machines. And that has made it a little bit of a different election preparation and a bit of a different experience on election day. There are a lot of people who are used to the polling location they go to, and they're used to the machines they see when they get there. So making sure people are prepared, know where they're going on election day, and that when they get to the polling location, they feel comfortable and confident in our new election machines. But they're very exciting ones. They're going to improve access, they improve reliability, consistency, and the work it takes to prepare for it results in a lot less headaches on election day, because we've got great machines that aren't going to jam or have issues like that, which makes our lives a bit easier when it comes to election day itself.
Mm-hmm. So I heard that as the 2020 census numbers have been released, new redistricting plans have been put in place. Can you tell me a bit more about this process?
Absolutely. So every 10 years, the US government does a census. And at the end of that, we have to redistrict. We have to draw new lines because each precinct in Brookline has to be roughly equal in population and has to have under 4,000 people. And in Brookline, we actually had a large increase in our population in the 2020 census. So a committee of town meeting members that was chaired by Heather Hamilton, our select board chair, and vice chaired by Dave Gayshock was put together last year in 2021 and proposed this new map. It actually adds a 17th precinct, which is smack dab in the middle of Coolidge Corner, as a new precinct 17. And it also is going to be very interesting in the fall because it happened in tandem with the state legislature drawing the state level districts. And that results in 3 precincts where the state line and the town line are not the same. So in precincts 5, 13, and 14, you actually have 2 different state representative districts. So in the fall, you will have precincts 5 and 5A, precincts 13 and 13A, and precincts 14 and 14A. It's going to be a little bit of an adjustment for voters. Everybody votes at the same polling location. If you vote in 5 or 5A, you are still at the Lincoln School. 13 or 13A, you're still going to be at Runkle. 14 and 14A, you're still going to be at Heath Street, but you're going to get a different ballot with a different state representative name on it. And that's going to be a adjustment for a lot of people to make, but it's going to give us the opportunity to welcome a couple of new state rep districts in Brookline and see some new names listed on those ballots.
Okay, so this has not significantly impacted polling locations.
So the only big change, so it's impacted polling locations a little bit, primarily because the precinct lines have moved. In every precinct except for in precinct 16, the lines changed. So it's possible that somebody who used to live in precinct 9 is now in precinct 8. And they're going to be making sure they go to the right polling location for precinct 8. We did add one new precinct, one new polling location after redistricting. Precinct 4, which used to have a lot of the central village in it, became a little bit of a narrower precinct focused around the Gateway East Boylston Street area. So in order to make it a more accessible polling location for the voters and closer, so it was within walking distance, the precinct 4 polling location was moved to the old Lincoln School on Boylston Street. So that is a new polling location that people are going to go to, but we're very excited to have a polling location that's a little bit more central and a little bit closer to the voters in that precinct.
Gotcha. And how do you feel about the recent splitting of precincts?
I think it's an interesting situation that happened. It was really a result of the COVID pandemic causing a delay in the census numbers. So typically the town would draw their lines first, and then the state would use the town's precinct to build the state legislative districts. This year, instead, it happened simultaneously. So there wasn't as much of an ability to work around the state rep districts and to work around the town precincts. So poses a little bit of a challenge for our office. It's a little bit more work on election day because we have essentially 3 additional precincts, requires some additional poll workers. But at the end of the day, we are used to handling double precincts. We're used to handling 17 precincts now. So going up to those 3 split precincts is going to be a pretty easy adjustment for us. It just might be a little bit of a new experience for voters, but these are the changes that are going to be in effect for the next 10 years. So hopefully after they have this experience in 2022, they'll be able to get used to it for 2024, 2026 and beyond.
And can you give me a bit more information? I've heard there have been challenges to eligibility in this election. Can you give me any information on that?
So yes, this is some of the changes that have happened as a result of the state legislative action during COVID-19, as well as some upcoming changes that we might be seeing. So we've had people who are looking to vote in person early, who are looking to vote by mail, and those permissions that we had during the COVID pandemic expired in December. So we're not able to offer that same access during this town election. The state legislature has been debating this, and there actually was an amendment, I believe Representative Vitolo was one of the supporters of it, to bring back no excuse absentee voting and early voting for the fall elections. So that will be a little bit of a different look for people going back to those COVID era allowances for expanded voter access. And we're prepared to implement those when they do come in. But for some voters, it's a little bit of a different look in 2022 for the town election than it might be coming up in the fall.
And have there been any unusual public interactions in this run-up?
I think the most unusual interaction has been with people who are unfamiliar with the 15 town meeting seat setup that happened this year as a result of redistricting. Because the precinct lines changed, the state law requires that all 15 town meeting seats come up in the next annual town election. So a lot of people who are used to seeing 5 names on the ballot, if they came in, got an absentee ballot over the counter, or when they first saw the list of candidates, they're really thrown off by that and not really sure what to think of it. So we had a lot of people call in and asking questions about that. And I think that's one of the best things our office is able to do is provide information, provide clarity, make sure people understand what's happening on election day. So when they show up at the polls, they feel confident in the vote that they're casting.
And finally, do you have any guesses on the turnout of the election?
You know, I think this is a really interesting test. We talk a lot about what drives a turnout in a town election, and some people say it's the town-wide race and the ballot question and the override that people show up for. And some people say it's the local town meeting race and your neighbors driving turnout to vote for their local representatives. And this is going to be a great opportunity for us to see if a huge number of very competitive races across the board for town meeting is going to drive that turnout. So I hope it's going to be a high turnout. We're electing 246 town meeting members. So I hope the turnout is very high. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed and we're going to see what happens.
We gave you the results of the town-wide elections, and we're very fortunate because here with us right now is Select Board Member-elect Michael Sandman. Mike, thanks for coming on the show, and let me be the first to congratulate you live on international television.
Thanks very much, Tommy.
Do you want to, before I ask you some questions, I want to give you actually a minute to talk directly to the folks in Brookline, directly to the voters,
Sure.
and talk about this election.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you. Thanks for having me, and thank you to the voters. I had a chance during the run-up to the vote to spend a lot of time talking to different people, to neighborhood groups, to various interest groups. And in fact, I put a link on my campaign website that let people sign up for a half an hour or a couple of back-to-back half-hour sessions on Zoom. And then more recently, we've just sat down and had coffee with a couple of people. That was very, very helpful. It gave me lots of different perspectives on what people are concerned about. After the election, I'll have a link up on a different website, which I'll publicize, and I hope that people will continue to book some time and that we'll continue to talk, not just to me, but to each other, because Brookline has had some controversies, and I think that the best way to resolve if not to resolve the controversies, at least to put them into perspective, is to have people talk with each other. There's a Japanese movie, Rashomon, that there are 7 characters, each looking at a particular event, a single event, and they all have a different perspective. We've had too many Rashomon moments in Brookline, and I'd very much like to see that diminish. So that's what I hope will happen.
Well, listen, I'm delighted that you're here tonight, and delighted that you managed to eke out a victory against no one in particular. I think probably the question you may have gotten perfectly reasonably and somewhat often is, why are you doing this to yourself? Why do you want to be on the select board? Tell us about what brings you to the role.
Thank you. So I've been involved in town affairs for a very long time. I was most recently I was chair of the finance committee, the advisory committee, and I stepped down from that at the end of the year. And then when Raul Fernandez decided not to run, but rather to run against you, I got some calls that people asked me to if I would consider running, and my initial thought was, who else can I talk into doing this? But I failed at that, and so I've ended up running myself. It's something that I had thought of previously, hadn't acted on it, and I'm really very excited to see what happens next.
Well, and I want to know about that. Of course, none of us know the future, but you've been active in town government long enough and intensely enough to have a good feel for what might be coming up in the next few years and where your skills and interests may leave some fingerprints, help change the direction a little bit. So tell us some of the things you've got in mind over the next few years.
Well, one of the things I very much want the select board to do, and probably requires casting a wider net than just the select board, is to sit down and figure out priorities, because priorities as expressed by town meeting as to what we spend our money on, where we put our emphasis, have shifted some. And at the same time, if there isn't a guiding set of priorities that has been put together for the town operations, and there is, by the way, for the school committee does really quite a good job with that. They set out priorities at the beginning of each budget cycle. What tends to happen is that the budget simply gets built on the last budget. And there are times when we need to be thinking about, well, are we really allocating funds in the grand sense appropriately? So I think that will be on the table, at least I certainly hope so. And I also know that we have a couple of big debt override votes coming, because we have some fire stations to rebuild and Pierce School. And I expect that we will have an operating override on the May 2023 ballot to provide more funding for the town and the schools both.
So how can we help? How can we, the residents of Brookline, elected officials, appointed folks, voters who do their best to stay out of town hall or Zoom, how can folks help guys like you do a great job?
Well, tell us what you think and what you want. That's really important. The priorities that we set should be the priorities of the town, after all. And be patient. There's a lot of explaining that needs to be done, particularly when I just tossed out a couple of comments about overrides. People need to understand why and how much and what that goes for. That's the job of the elected officials. But the important thing is for the residents to listen.
Well, I know it's important for the folks in the front of the room to listen to, and I have no doubt that you will. I've known you a long time, and I'm really delighted for you and for Brookline. My last question, where are you going out for a drink tonight?
Well, I'm going home to, after I collect some of the yard signs that I've left on people's lawns, sort of do my part of cleaning up the town a bit, and then I'm going home to perhaps have a glass of wine with my wife.
What I heard you say is you're not telling folks where you're going, so folks should go out to all the bars and restaurants in town searching for you, get a drink for yourself, enjoy the nightlife, and we'll get back to work tomorrow.
And bolster the economy of Brookline.
I hope you'll hear me out for just a few minutes before going to bed and waking up with some renewed optimism. This show wouldn't be possible without a long list of people, and I'm going to tell you about some of them now. Thank you to our guests, Town Clerk Ben Kaufman and Select Board Member-elect Michael Sandman. Thank you to reporter Molly Lewison and to the League of Women Voters. Thank you to the results runners. Precinct 7, maybe run a little faster next time, but thank you nonetheless. Most importantly, thank you to Brookline Interactive Group. This isn't Wayne's World. This is a modern media studio. And this program tonight was the result of hundreds of hours of preparation. And if you're watching this, you've likely watched a select board hearing or a school committee meeting or an advisory committee meeting or a town meeting made possible by Brookline Interactive Group. That isn't easy either, and Big deserves our admiration, our thanks, and our active support. This was a challenging election. Our town has several significant local challenges related to our schools, our parks, our transportation, and our public services. We've got regional challenges related to housing and transportation as well, all within the context of a global pandemic that has killed over 6 million people and a national, decentralized political and social movement that seeks to highlight racism, discrimination, and equality experienced by Black people. And make no mistake, this election was bruising. Tremendous enthusiasm, significant debate, and enormous effort from so many. Sometimes the competition was spirited, earnest, fair, and honest. Other times, it failed to meet our appropriately high standards. A few times, the tactic or turn of phrase was plainly out of bounds. And if you, as a candidate, were a victim of that nonsense, I'm sorry that it happened to you. Other times, many times, I believe, one group felt that an action was beyond the pale, whereas another felt it hard-nosed but fair play. As in many situations, I suspect that in cases like these, many of us tend to judge ourselves by our intentions and others by their actions. To the people whose names I did not call tonight, thank you. Thank you for running. Thank you for raising issues that matter to you, for registering voters, for driving turnout, for believing in our democracy and our town. I hope this isn't the last of your participation. There are countless boards, committees, and commissions, and I know your talents would be welcome there. And perhaps I'll get to read your name next year. To the people whose names I did call, the folks who filled the 261 positions, congratulations on your win. Sleep well tonight, for along with the 31 electeds who were not up for election today, you've got two enormous challenges ahead of you. You've got to help our town through our challenges with schools, with transportation, with housing and development, with social services, with parks, and that's one tall order. You also need to do it together. The divisive rhetoric on social media and listservs, and in some election slogans, may rally the like-minded, but it will not bring us to good decision-making. The second challenge our locally elected leaders face is to govern gracefully, to give grace to others, even when tongues and elbows have been sharp, to gracefully respond with openness and kindness, even if others haven't seemed kind in the past, and to navigate the town meeting gracefully, because surely we can give full attention to the town's business in fewer days than it's taken in the past few warrants. It isn't easy, but Brookline is worth it. Brookline, you're a great town, and I'm proud to be a part of you. Good night.